The glass door of Redwood Heights Bank swings open with a chime. A few heads turn. Elliot Grant, in his old army cap and a neatly pressed coat, steps inside. His steps are slow but sure. In his hand, a government-issued envelope. Inside, a check, long awaited, long fought for, compensation for decades-old wounds that never fully healed. The bank is calm. Claire Maddox, behind the counter, is flipping through files. She looks up and offers a customer service smile that doesn't reach her eyes. "Good morning, sir. How can I help you?" Elliot approaches, lays the check gently on the counter as if it were fragile glass. "I'd like to deposit this." Claire picks it up, examines it. Her smile fades. The Treasury seal catches the light, but her eyes squint at the paper, at the format. This doesn't look standard. The check stock is different. And this number? She taps it with her nail. This routing number doesn't match our regular federal forms. Elliot straightens slightly. It's a special issue. Retroactive disability. Came straight from Washington. You can call to verify. Sir, I'm sorry, but I've never seen one like this. Her voice tightens. She flags her manager with a subtle wave. Martin Elridge appears from his glass-walled office. Middle-aged, gray tie, impatient eyes. Claire holds out the check. It seems off. Paper type, and the Treasury number doesn't align with what I was trained on. Martin glances at the check for no more than 2 seconds. Doesn't ask the man his name. Doesn't ask for ID. If it looks suspicious, standard procedure is to destroy it. Prevent potential fraud. Sir, Claire says, I'm going to have to follow protocol. Elliot blinks. Excuse me? If you'd like to speak with the fraud department, I can give you a number. But this instrument can't be processed. That's a federal document, Elliot says, his voice cracking with disbelief. It's real. Sir, I have to follow the rules. Claire turns and, without hesitation, feeds the check into the shredder beside her desk. The machine whirs, chewing through it with a sterile efficiency. Elliot doesn't move. His hand still rests on the counter. The sound fades. Silence. Even the air in the room seems to pause. Claire looks up. Slightly flushed. Unsure now. Martin has already walked away. Elliot withdraws his hand. Folds it into the other. Straightens his shoulders. And walks out. No one stops him. No one speaks. The bell above the door chimes once more. The call. The rain had started by the time Elliot Grant returned home. Not the kind of rain that rushes, but the kind that lingers, soft, cold, uninvited. Like shame. He placed his coat on the same hook he'd used for 30 years, his cane. On the kitch. He sat, hands folded, eyes locked. On the back of the photo was a number, written in black ink, slightly faded. He pick. 3 rings. A click. A hail. Elliot closed his eyes. The Marcus. It. A.B. Then warmth. The Elliot? Jesus. It's been how long? 2. Tell me. So he did. Not with Eng. When he finished, the silence on the other end had changed. It had weight now. They shredded it? Didn't even. That I told them that. Give me 5 minutes. Elliot hung up. Why? Across the country, in a secure building within the Treasury Department, Deputy Undersecretary Marcus Hale was already walking fast down a corridor. Section 18, Title 1. At Redwood Heights Bank, the afternoon. 3 black SU. Claire Maddox looked up from her monitor, confused, as the first man in A. Customers were quiet. Claire felt her heart hammer against her ribs. Martin Elridge, summoned from his office, looked more annoyed than alarmed. Can I help you? The agent didn't look at him. Who authorized the destruction of a Treasury-issued document belonging to Mr. Elliot Grant? Martin's face twitched. We followed our internal fraud protocol. The teller flagged it as suspicious. You destroyed a Legal. As she said, you're the branch manager. Claire stood now pale and trembling. I didn't mean. I didn't know. Adi. Gahi. The agent cut her off. US. Claire's voice cracked. Guy was trying to follow rules. You broke Federa. Silence filled the room again, not the quiet of routine, but the sill. Another agent returned with F. Martin tried to regain contract. Listen, I'm sure we can. This? See. Outside, Elliot sat on tea. And though he didn't smile, though his hands still trembled, he whispered aloud. You listened, Marcus. That's... The storm began to lift. The days that followed were slow and silent. Not because nothing was happening, but because, for Elliot Grant, the world had already spoken. He had sat alone each morning beside the same window. The old wood creaked under his chair. Outside, Vermont wore its spring coat, soft green with distant winds. But inside, Elliot felt the chill of something torn that couldn't be mended with apologies. A letter arrived first. Then a second. Then a call from a woman in a crisp voice. Mr. Grant, the department would like to formally recognize. He had hung up gently. Recognition. Always after the damage. Always too late. But the knock on his door 3 days later was different. When he opened it, he saw 2 soldiers in dress uniform. Not boys, men. Their posture straight. Their presence solemn. Mr. Elliot Grant? Yes. We're here to accompany you. They didn't say where. They didn't need to. He knew. He nodded once, reached for his cane, and followed them into the waiting black car. The ride was quiet. No small talk. Just the hum of wheels and memory. They pulled into a wide parking lot flanked by government buildings. Flags were at full mast. A small crowd had already gathered on the lawn, between white folding chairs and a makeshift stage. Reporters. Veterans. Local officials. But all turned when the car door opened. And Elliot Grant stepped out. He didn't limp, though he could have. He didn't smile, though he was grateful. He walked as he always had, as if every step carried names no one else remembered. Marcus Hale stood near the podium, straightening his jacket. When he saw Elliot, he came down the steps, met him halfway. No handshake. No ceremony. Just a moment, 2 soldiers, once brothers in arms, nodding to something deeper than words. You shouldn't have come all this way, Elliot said. Neither should justice, Marcus replied. But here we are. Elliot looked around. People. Cameras. Some faces he knew from the town. Some from long ago. And one in particular, Claire Maddox, standing behind the crowd, silent, not in uniform, not behind a desk, just watching. She looked nothing like the woman who had shredded the check. She looked like someone learning how to be human again. The ceremony began. A brief introduction. A reading of Elliot's service, his tours, his medals, his wounds. The decades it had taken to recognize his trauma not as invisible, but as unacknowledged. Then Marcus took the podium. When we speak of duty, we often forget what we owe to those who served, not just in battle, but in patience. Mr. Grant waited 40 years for a piece of paper that took 4 seconds to shred. But his dignity, his name cannot be torn. He paused and the crowd held its breath. Today, on behalf of the Department of the Treasury, and more importantly, on behalf of a nation that failed to look him in the eye when it mattered, we restore not only what was lost, but what was earned. He stepped down. A soldier approached with a box wrapped in velvet. Inside, a newly reissued check. Validated. Certified. Untouched. Alongside it, a framed citation for exceptional service, and a folded flag, pressed and crisp. Elliot didn't cry. But his fingers trembled when he reached out. Not for the check, but for the flag. He stood back straight, eyes on the cloth that had once draped over the caskets of friends. A bugle began to play. Not for mourning, but for honor. And then Marcus raised his hand in a formal salute. And Elliot, with breath steady and chest full, returned it. The crowd rose in silence. No applause. Just presence. When the music faded, Elliot turned slightly, his eyes finding Claire at the edge. She didn't flinch. She met his gaze. And though he said nothing, he gave her the smallest of nods. Not forgiveness. But maybe a beginning. As the sun dipped lower behind the flagpole, Elliot Grant stood at the center of the crowd. No longer the old man in line. No longer invisible. That night, Elliot sat in silence beside the new check. It lay on the table, untouched, not for lack of need, but because it could never replace what had been torn that day. Yet in the folded flag, in the hush of that crowd, in the firm grip of an old brother in arms, something had shifted. He had been seen. Heard. Believed. Some scars never fade, but when justice rises, even late, it leaves a light. And in that light, Elliot let out a long, quiet breath, not in defeat, but in peace. For every Elliot Grant, there are countless others still waiting. Waiting to be acknowledged. Waiting to be treated with the dignity they earned in silence. Waiting for someone to say, "You matter. You are not forgotten." Let this story be more than just a reckoning. Let it be a reminder. If you work in a system, question its blind spots. If you see injustice, don't look away. And if a veteran, or any forgotten soul, stands in front of you, listen. Completely. Honor delayed is better than never. But honor given now can change everything.